Welcome to all for today's session on course Java Programming for Beginners. In this session, we are going to discuss the topic exception handling in Java programming language. Here, first, we are going to discuss about the exception handling fundamentals. Here, in Java programming language, support for the exception handling. Here, exception is an abnormal condition that arises in a code sequence at runtime. The Java programming language support for handling two types of errors. One is compile time error and second one is runtime error. When error is get occur during a compilation of the source program, that kind of error is called as compile time error. And compile time errors are get occur due to syntax problems, or if the statements written inside the source code is not syntactically correct. In that case, the syntax errors or compile time error are get occur during the compilation of source program. Whereas the runtime error are the unexpected errors. Runtime errors are the unexpected errors which are get occur during the execution of the source program. During the execution of the program. Once here the runtime errors are get occur, such runtime errors are called as exceptions are get occur. In that case, the statement at which the runtime exception is get occur or runtime error is get occur, at that statement, the abnormal termination of program is there. The program is get terminated at that statement due to the occurrence of the runtime error or the exceptions. When the exception condition arises, an object representing that exception is created and thrown in a method that caused the error. Once here the exception is get occur during the execution of the program, at that statement, the execution of the program is get abnormally terminated. Here in Java programming language, the exception handling is provided with the help of exception handling mechanism. In Java source code, we can handle the exception when the exception is get occur during the execution of the program. That kind of exception or a runtime error is get handled through a exception handling mechanism. And once the exception is get occur, that exception is get handled and the remaining part of the source program or the program is get executed without abnormal termination. With the help of exception handling in a Java programming language, we can protect the program from abnormal termination, so that whatever at the statement at which the exception or error is get occur, at that time that exception is get handled and the remaining part of the program is get executed as per the normal execution sequence. In Java programming language, the exception handling is managed by through 5 keywords. The first one is try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. These are the 5 keywords are used in a Java programming language to handle the exception. The statement, or you can say that a program statement which can generate the exception, such kind of statements are written inside the try block. If the exception is get occurred within a try block, that exception object is thrown, and after the try block we have to write the catch block. Inside the catch block we have to specify the exception type. Okay, once an exception is thrown from a try block, that exception is get cached inside a catch block, and it will print a message that indicate reason due to which the exception is get occur inside a try block. Here, with the help of catch block, whatever exception is generated inside a try block statement, that exception is get handled in the catch block, so that whatever statement are written after the catch block that are get executed. In a normal case, a system generated exceptions are automatically thrown by Java runtime system. A Java runtime system will generate an exception, generate a system generated exception, and that are automatically thrown by a Java runtime system. When the programmer want to throw an exception manually, in that case, the programmer has to use a throw keyword. And a throws keyword is used when any exception that is thrown out of a method must be specified as such by a thrown class. When a method want to throw an exception, that method will throw the exception through the throws class. And after that, there is finally block is there, or finally keyword is there. Okay, the finally keyword or finally block is used. Okay, whenever exception occur or not occur, the statement which are written inside the finally block are get executed. The general form of exception handling is shown here. Okay, inside the try block here, a try block is always written inside. A try block is always written in the form of opening closing bracket. Inside the try block, we can write a statement, we can write a program statement which can generate a exception. Okay, and whatever exception are generated by a try block, that exception are get cached through a catch block. Your catch block is responsible to catch the exceptions which are generated by a try block. And inside the try block, okay, we can write a statement, we can write a program statement which will display the information about the exception. After the try block, we can write a number of catch blocks. Okay, whatever exception generated by whatever exception object thrown by a try block, that exception object is get matched with any one of the catch block to handle the exception which is generated through a try block. And after that, after the catch block, we have to write the finally block. The finally block is an optional block. Okay, when the finally block, the statement inside the finally blocks are get executed whether exception occur or not occur. Okay, once the try block is get executed, okay, after that the finally block is get executed whether the exception is occur or not occur. The next one is types of exception. Exception types. All exception types, whatever exception types are provided by a Java runtime systems or handled by Java runtime systems, are all exception types are the subclasses of built-in class throwable. Okay, throwable is one of the exception class. Whatever exceptions types, all exceptions types are the subclass of built-in class throwable. A throwable class has two subclasses. They are exception and second one is error. Okay, exception to handle the exceptional condition that user program should catch. Here exception class is a subclass of throwable, okay, which can handle the exception which is generated by the Java runtime system. An important class and important subclasses of exception is runtime exception that includes division by zero and invalid array indexing. An error to handle the exceptional condition that are not expected to be caught under normal circumstances, that is stack overflow. Okay, error is also one of the subclass of throwable. Okay, it will the error class is used to handle the exceptional condition that are not expected to be caught under a normal circumstances of execution of the program. Then uncaught exception. If exception is not caught, whatever exception is generated by the program statement, if that exception is not get catch, okay, or not get handled, okay, or we can say that the statement which can generate a exception, if such kind of statements are not written inside a try block, in that case, whatever statement are generated, whatever exceptions are generated by the Java runtime systems that are not get handled. Okay, in order to handle, if that exception is not get handled, in that case, ultimately the execution of the program is get stopped at that statement only. Once the exception is get occur due to the execution of specific statement, okay, at that statement the execution of program is terminated. Okay, once the execution of program is terminated, that execution, that termination is called as abnormal termination of the program. Here the example of abnormal termination of the program is shown here. If exception is not catched or exception is not get handled, then the execution of the program is get stopped at that statement only. Here, if you go for if when the execution of the statement int a equals to 42 upon d, okay, if this statement is get executed, then at the execution time the exception is get occur, that is division by zero exception is get occur. Okay, at this statement the execution of the program is get terminated abnormally. Then using a try and catch block, handling the exception has two benefits. Handling exception has two benefits. One is it allows to fix errors, and second one is that to prevent a program from abnormal termination. Okay, once an exception is get handled, if the exception is get handled properly inside the Java program, then it will avoid the abnormal termination of the program. Then the catch clause should follow immediately the try block. Here, once you write a catch block, after that we have to write a catch block. Okay, after the try block we have to write a catch block. Whatever exceptions are generated through a statements of try block, that exceptions are get handled. Once exception is thrown, a program control transfer out of the try block into a catch block. Once here exception is get occur due to a statement which is written inside the try block, then the program control will get transferred towards a catch block to find out whatever exception is generated through a statement of try block, whether that exception is get matched with a catch block. Once the exception which is generated by the statement in try block, that one is get matched with the catch block, then that catch block is get executed. Here the example of the exception handling is shown here. In this example, the statement here, the statement which are written, the exception that are written inside the try block. Here the statement a equals to 42 upon d. This statement will generate the exception. Whatever exception object is thrown by this exception, this exception is catched through the catch inside the catch block. Okay, and this catch block will execute. This catch block will handle the exception, that is division by zero exception. That is here, this catch block will catch the exception, whatever exception is generated by a try block. Here the example of try catch is shown here. Then next one is here inside a try and catch statement from a unit of exception handling. Here the scope of the catch block is restricted to those statements specified by the immediately preceding the try statement. We cannot use a try on a single statement. Here inside the try block we can write a statement which can generate a exception. Here inside the try block a number of statements are written which can generate a exception, and whatever exception is generated by a try block, that exception is get handled through a catch block. Catch block is written immediately after a try block. Okay, and inside the catch block a exception type is specified. Whatever exception is generated by a try block, that exception is get matched with a type of catch exception, Once a match is found, then the exception associated with that catch block is get executed. Then multiple catch clause. After the try block, we can write a multiple catch blocks. When exception is thrown, each catch statement is inspected in order, and the first one whose type matches that of exception is executed. Here after the try block, the number of catch statements are written. Okay, once a statement inside the try block will generate the exception, that exception is get matched with a exception which are specified inside the catch block. After one catch statement execute, the other are bypasses. Okay, once the exception object is get matched with the catch, once the exception object is get matched with a catch type exception, that catch block is get executed and remaining are ignored. Here the example of multiple catch is shown here. Here inside the try block we can write a statement which can generate a exception. After the try block we can write a number of catch statement, and inside the catch statement we can write a specific type of exception. Once a exception is get generated, okay, that exception object is get matched with first type of exception object which is specified in the first catch statement. If match is found, then that catch statement is get executed. Otherwise it will check for second type of exception object which is specified in the second catch statement. If match is found, then it will execute that statement, that catch block. Here you have to take the precaution that, remember that exception subclass must come before any of their superclasses. When you defining a catch block, and inside the catch block we are specifying the exception type. Okay, when you are specifying the exception type, in that case we are specifying a class of exception. Okay, at the time of specifying a class of exception, in that case you have to specify this subtype of exception first. Then you have to specify, then after that you have to specify the superclass of exception if you want to specify. Okay, if a superclass is specified first, then it does not go for checking a subclasses of exception. For example, arithmetic exception is a subclass of exception. If exception class is specified first before the arithmetic exception, then ultimately exception is get, whatever arithmetic exceptions are get occurred due to the statement of try block, that exceptions are get catch through inside the catch block where exception type is specified. It does not check for the catch block where the arithmetic exception is specified. Then after that, a throw. After that, there is a keyword that is a throw. Okay, it is possible for your program to throw an exception explicitly. When a programmer want to throw the exception explicitly, in that case, a keyword throw is used. Throw, they need to specify a throwable instance. A throwable instance must be the object of type throwable or subclass throwable. There are two types. There are two ways to obtain a throwable object. One is using a parameter into catch clause. Second one is creating one with new operators. These are the two methods that are used to create a throwable object. Here, the significance of throw keyword is specified. Okay, here when the programmer want to throw the exception explicitly, in that case the programmer has to specify throw new then null pointer exception. Okay, this is the inbuilt subclass, inbuilt exception subclass null pointer exception, and we are passing here demo as object to this class. And here whatever exception is generated by this try block, that one is get catch through a catch block and get handled inside the catch block. The next one is throws. If method is capable of causing an exception, that is, it does not handle, it must specify this behavior so that the caller of the method can guard themselves against that exception. If whatever statement are written inside the method, if that statement will generate an exception, if you want to handle such kind of exception, in that case, we have to use a throws keyword. Just after the parameter list of method, you have to specify a throws, then you have to specify the exception list. Okay, it is not applicable for error or runtime exception or any of their subclasses. For example, suppose if you go for writing exception, throw an exception, okay, here throw new illegal exception. Okay, you have to write this statement, you have to throw the exception always inside a try block, always inside a try block. Okay, if you return outside the try block, then it will gives an error. Okay, here we are using a throws keyword. Okay, throws illegal access exception. Okay, here throws illegal exception, illegal access exception. Here the significance of throws keyword is shown here. Okay, this throws keyword will throws the exception, that is illegal access exception, and that one is get handled inside the catch block. Okay, here once this method is get called, okay, it will throw the exception, that is illegal access exception, if such kind of exception is get occurred. The next one is finally block. The finally block, it is used to handle the premature execution of the method. Okay, that is method to open a file, that is method open a file upon entry and close the file upon exit. The finally create a block of code that will be executed after try and catch block has completed, and before the code following a try catch block. The finally clause will execute whether or not an exception is thrown. The finally block is get executed whether or not an exception is thrown. Here the example of finally is shown here. Here try is there. After the try, there is catch block is there. Okay, after the try block, there is the finally block is there. Okay, the finally block is get executed after the execution of the try block. Here the list of built-in errors of Java programming is shown here. And here the built-in exceptions which are generated by the Java runtime systems are shown here. So that in today's session, we have discussed about the basic concept of exception, type of exceptions, and after that we have discussed about the significance of try, catch, throw, throws, and finally block in a Java programming language. Thanks to all.